An Arab millionaire is surprised by the words of the new employee as he passes by her. What seemed like just another casual encounter completely changes his perspective. That phrase lingered in his mind, raising questions about his own choices. In the heart of Dubai's financial district, where ambition touched the sky through gleaming glass and steel, stood the Al Rashid Tower, a testament to the wealth and power of one of the Emirates' most influential families. Zain Al Rashid, the 35-year-old heir to the Al Rashid Group, stood at his office window on the 70th floor, his reflection fragmenting across the tinted glass that separated him from the scorching desert air. The morning sun cast long shadows across his meticulously organized desk, where reports and contracts awaited his signature. Zain adjusted his custom-made suit, a habit that had become almost unconscious after years of board meetings and business negotiations. His dark eyes, sharp and calculating, surveyed the sprawling cityscape below, a kingdom of commerce he had helped build, yet one that left him feeling increasingly hollow. "Mr. Al Rashid," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "The board members are waiting in the conference room." Zain pressed the intercom button. "I'll be there in 5 minutes." He gathered his papers, mind already racing through the quarterly projections he would present. The Al Rashid Group had expanded significantly under his leadership, diversifying from real estate into technology, healthcare, and sustainable energy. Yet success had come at a price, one that manifested in silent dinners alone and relationships that never ventured beyond surface-level pleasantries. The elevator arrived with its familiar soft chime. As the doors opened, Zain found himself face to face with someone he had never seen before. A young woman in the building's staff uniform sat in a wheelchair, her hands expertly maneuvering the control panel. What caught his attention wasn't her wheelchair, but rather the quiet confidence in her eyes as she met his gaze. "Good morning, Mr. Al Rashid," she said, her voice carrying a melodious lilt that seemed out of place in the sterile corporate environment. "Level 65? Zain nodded, momentarily thrown off balance by her direct approach. Most employees averted their eyes when he entered, their deference born of years of hierarchical conditioning. But this woman's smile reached her eyes, genuine and unforced. "I'm Sarah Martinez," she continued, pressing the button for the 65th floor. First day on the job. The elevator began its descent, and Zain found himself studying her reflection in the mirrored walls. Her dark hair was neatly pulled back, revealing features that seemed to blend Middle Eastern and Latin American heritage. There was something compelling about her presence, a strength that radiated from within, defying the physical limitations of her wheelchair. "Welcome to Al Rashid Tower," he replied, his usual clipped tone softening slightly. "I trust you're finding everything accessible." Sarah's smile widened. "The building's infrastructure is impressive, Mr. Al Rashid, though I've noticed a few areas that could be improved for better accessibility. I hope you don't mind me saying so." Her candor was refreshing. "Not at all. Perhaps you could compile your observations. We're always looking to enhance our facilities." The elevator stopped at the 65th floor, and Zain stepped out, his mind unusually distracted from the impending board meeting. Something about Sarah Martinez had pierced through his carefully constructed professional facade, leaving him with an unfamiliar sensation of curiosity. Throughout the board meeting, as he presented growth projections and acquisition strategies, his thoughts kept drifting back to the elevator encounter. It wasn't just Sarah's physical presence that had caught his attention. It was the way she carried herself, the dignity and purpose in her movements, the absence of self-pity or hesitation. Later that afternoon, Zain found himself reviewing the employee files, something he rarely did for building staff. Sarah's application revealed that she had previously worked at several prestigious buildings in Dubai, all with glowing recommendations. Her resume mentioned a degree in architectural design, which explained her keen eye for accessibility improvements. What the file didn't reveal was the story behind her wheelchair, and Zain caught himself wondering about it. He closed the file, troubled by his unusual interest in an employee's personal history. As the CEO of a global conglomerate, he had trained himself to maintain professional distance, to view people as assets or liabilities, never as individuals with stories worth knowing. That evening, as Zain prepared to leave his office, he found himself taking the elevator instead of his private executive lift. Sarah was there, her presence somehow making the vast space feel more intimate. "Good evening, Mr. Al Rashid," she said, her voice carrying the same warmth as in the morning. "Level 1? Yes, thank you." He noticed a sketchbook on her lap, partially covered by her uniform jacket. "You're an artist?" Sarah glanced down at the sketchbook, then back at him with a hint of surprise in her expression. "I sketch building designs sometimes. Old habit from my architecture days." The elevator descended smoothly, and Zain found himself asking, "Would you be interested in joining our Accessibility Improvement Committee? Your professional background could be valuable." The words had left his mouth before he could analyze their implications, breaking every rule he had about maintaining hierarchy within the organization. But Sarah's face lit up with genuine enthusiasm. "I would be honored, Mr. Al-Rashid. Thank you for considering my input." As Zain walked to his waiting car in the underground parking, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in his carefully ordered world. In the space of a day, Sarah Martinez had somehow managed to crack the surface of his professional armor, leaving him both unsettled and intrigued by the possibility of what lay beneath. The following weeks brought an unexpected rhythm to Zain's typically monotonous routine. He found himself taking more elevator rides than necessary, each brief encounter with Sarah adding layers to his understanding of her character. She had an architect's eye for detail and an unwavering optimism that seemed to brighten the steel and glass environment of Al-Rashid Tower. During one of their elevator conversations, Sarah shared her vision for making the building more inclusive. "The challenge isn't just about physical accessibility," she explained, her hands moving expressively as she spoke. "It's about creating spaces that make everyone feel valued and capable." Her words resonated with Zain, though he couldn't quite explain why. Perhaps it was because, despite his position of power, he had never felt truly at ease in the corporate world he inhabited. The endless pursuit of profit and expansion had left little room for human connection. One evening, as Zain reviewed company documents in his office, his sister Amira burst in without announcement, a privilege she alone enjoyed. "Brother, we need to talk," she declared, her activist's passion evident in her voice. "I've been looking into our company's history of workplace accidents." Zain looked up from his papers, noting the serious expression on his sister's face. Amira had always been the family's conscience, using her position to advocate for corporate responsibility and social justice. "What have you found?" he asked, setting aside his work. Amira placed a folder on his desk. 3 years ago, one of our subsidiary construction companies was involved in an incident. The details were buried in legal settlements and non-disclosure agreements, but the victims never received proper compensation. As Zain read through the documents, his blood ran cold. The incident had occurred at a construction site managed by Al-Rashid Development, resulting in several injuries. Among the victims was a young architect who had been conducting a site inspection, Sarah Martinez. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. The wheelchair she used wasn't the result of a random accident. It was directly connected to his family's company. The weight of this knowledge pressed against his chest, making it difficult to breathe. "Did you know about this?" Amira asked, studying his reaction. "No," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "The subsidiary managers must have handled it internally. They probably thought they were protecting the company's reputation." Amira's expression softened. "I've seen how you look at her, Zain. I know you've been spending time talking to her. What are you going to do?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Zain had spent his entire life learning to protect the family business, to maintain the careful distance required of a leader. But for the first time, he found himself questioning whether that distance had come at too high a cost. "I need to make this right," he said finally, standing up from his desk. "But first I need to understand exactly what happened." Over the next few days, Zain delved deep into the company records, uncovering a trail of negligence and cover-ups that made his stomach turn. The construction site had failed to meet basic safety standards, and when accidents occurred, the victims were silenced with minimal compensation and ironclad legal agreements. What struck him most was Sarah's response to the incident. According to the reports, she had refused to sign a non-disclosure agreement, insisting instead on using her experience to advocate for better safety standards. Even in the face of personal tragedy, she had chosen to fight for positive change. During this time, Zain continued his daily interactions with Sarah, each encounter now tinged with his private knowledge and growing guilt. She remained as warm and engaging as ever, sharing her ideas for improving the building's design and occasionally showing him sketches from her notebook. "You know," she said during one elevator ride, "when I first started working here, I thought this building was just another corporate monument, but now I see its potential to be something more, a place that could set new standards for inclusive design." Her words carried an unintentional irony that made Zane's chest tighten. Here she was, imagining a better future in the very building owned by the company that had altered her life's trajectory. As the elevator reached the ground floor, Sarah turned to him with her characteristic smile. "Mr. Al-Rashid, I've completed those accessibility improvement proposals you requested. Would you like to review them tomorrow?" Zane nodded, knowing that tomorrow would bring more than just a discussion of building improvements. He had made his decision. He would tell her the truth about the accident, regardless of the consequences. The weight of deception had become unbearable, and something in him had fundamentally shifted since meeting Sarah. That night, as he stood at his office window watching the city lights flicker to life, Zane realized that Sarah had already changed him in ways he couldn't have anticipated. She had shown him that true strength lay not in maintaining distance, but in having the courage to bridge it. The morning Zane decided to reveal the truth dawned with unusual clarity over Dubai's skyline. He had barely slept, rehearsing different ways to tell Sarah about his company's involvement in her accident. None of them seemed adequate. When he arrived at his office, he found an elaborate presentation waiting on his desk, Sarah's accessibility improvement proposal. The document was meticulously prepared, filled with innovative solutions and thoughtful details that revealed both her architectural expertise and her personal understanding of accessibility challenges. Her dedication made what he had to do even more difficult. He asked his assistant to schedule a private meeting with Sarah in the executive conference room rather than his office. The formal setting felt wrong, but he couldn't think of a better alternative. When Sarah arrived, her wheelchair gliding smoothly over the polished floor, she carried her usual air of quiet confidence. "Your proposal is excellent," Zain began, his voice carefully controlled. "But before we discuss it, there's something I need to tell you." Sarah's expression shifted slightly, picking up on his unusual tone. "Is everything all right, Mr. Al-Rashid?" "Please call me Zain," he said, then paused, gathering his courage. "I recently discovered something about the accident that led to your injury. It happened at a construction site owned by one of our subsidiaries." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's hands, which had been resting loosely in her lap, tightened their grip on her wheelchair's armrests. Her face remained composed, but Zain could see the shock rippling through her body. "You didn't know?" she asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I found out last week," Zain admitted. "The subsidiary managers handled it internally. They buried the reports and pushed through minimal settlements. I should have known. I should have paid closer attention." Sarah's eyes met his, and for the first time since they'd met, he saw pain there. "I refused their settlement," she said. "They offered money in exchange for silence. I couldn't accept that, not when other workers were still at risk." "I know," Zain replied. "I read the reports. Your stance was remarkable." "Remarkable?" Sarah's voice took on an edge he'd never heard before. "People were getting hurt because of negligence, Mr. Al-Rashid. Basic safety protocols were ignored. Speaking up wasn't remarkable, it was necessary." The formal use of his surname stung, but he knew he deserved it. "You're right, and I want to make it right, not just for you, but for everyone affected by our company's negligence." Sarah wheeled herself to the window, looking out at the city sprawling below. "Making it right isn't about money," she said finally. "It's about change, real change." "I agree," Zain responded, moving to stand beside her. "I've already initiated a complete audit of all our construction sites. Every safety violation will be addressed, but I want to do more than that. I want to transform how we approach accessibility and inclusion across all our properties." Sarah turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. "And my proposal? Was this meeting just about clearing your conscience?" "No," Zain said firmly. "Your ideas are brilliant, Sarah. They deserve to be implemented regardless of our connection to each other. But I understand if you don't want to work with us anymore." A complex mix of emotions crossed Sarah's face. "I need time," she said finally. "This is a lot to process." "Of course," Zain replied, fighting the urge to say more, to somehow fix everything immediately. As Sarah turned to leave, she paused at the door. "You know what the hardest part was?" she asked, not turning around. "Not the physical pain or the rehabilitation. It was feeling like my voice didn't matter, like I was just a problem to be solved with money and legal documents." Her words hit Zain like a physical blow. He watched her leave, understanding that this revelation had changed everything between them. The easy rapport they had developed over the past weeks felt suddenly fragile, tainted by the weight of his family's responsibility. Later that day, Amira found him still in the conference room staring at Sarah's proposal. "How did she take it?" his sister asked gently. "Better than I deserved," Zain replied. "She's extraordinary, Amira. Even now, she's thinking about how to make things better for others." "And what are you thinking about?" Amira pressed, studying her brother's troubled expression. "About how to prove to her that her voice matters," Zain said. "About how to show her that real change is possible, even in a company as set in its ways as ours." As the sun set over Dubai, casting long shadows through the conference room windows, Zain began to formulate a plan. It would take more than words or promises to earn back Sarah's trust. It would require fundamental changes to how the Al Rashid Group operated, changes that would likely face resistance from the old guard of the company. But for the first time in his career, Zain felt absolutely certain about the path forward. Sarah had shown him what real strength looked like, and he was determined to prove worthy of the lessons she had taught him. The weeks following Zain's revelation were tense and uncertain. Sarah had taken a leave of absence, her absence from the elevator leaving a palpable void in Zain's daily routine. He respected her need for space, but found himself constantly fighting the urge to reach out, to try and make things right. Instead, he channeled his energy into action. The audit of Al Rashid Group's construction sites revealed a pattern of cost-cutting measures that had prioritized profit over safety. Zain spent long hours in meetings with project managers and safety officers, making it clear that this approach would no longer be tolerated. "But sir," one veteran manager protested, "these changes will significantly impact our profit margins." Zain fixed the man with a steely gaze. "And what's the cost of a human life or a person's mobility? We're not just changing policies, we're changing our entire corporate culture." Amira, who had been quietly observing these meetings, couldn't help but notice the transformation in her brother. Gone was the coolly detached CEO, replaced by a man driven by a newfound sense of purpose. One evening, as they shared a rare quiet moment in Zain's office, Amira broached the subject. "You're different, brother. This isn't just about Sarah anymore, is it?" Zain looked up from the stack of reports he'd been reviewing. "No, it's not," he admitted. "She opened my eyes to something I should have seen long ago. Our wealth, our influence, it means nothing if we're not using it to make a positive difference." Amira smiled, a mixture of pride and concern in her eyes. "You know the board won't like these changes. They'll say you're risking the company's stability." "Let them," Zain replied, his jaw set in determination. "It's time we redefined what stability means for Al Rashid Group." As the internal changes gained momentum, Zain received an unexpected call. It was Sarah, her voice hesitant but resolute. "I've been thinking about your offer," she said. "About implementing my proposals." Zain's heart raced, but he kept his voice steady. "And? I want to do it," Sarah continued. "Not for you or for Al Rashid Group, but for all the people who could benefit from truly inclusive spaces. But I have conditions." "Name them," Zain said without hesitation. Sarah's conditions were clear: full creative control over the project, a team of her choosing, including other individuals with disabilities, and a commitment to implement the changes across all Al Rashid properties, not just the main tower. "Agreed," Zain said, relief flooding through him. "When can you start?" "I already have," Sarah replied, a hint of her old warmth returning to her voice. "I'll send over my initial team roster and project timeline this afternoon." True to her word, Sarah hit the ground running. She assembled a diverse team of architects, engineers, and accessibility experts, many of whom had personal experience with various disabilities. The energy and innovation they brought to the project were infectious, spreading through the company like a wave of fresh air. Zain found himself increasingly involved in the day-to-day progress of what they now called the Inclusive Design Initiative. He attended team meetings, not as the CEO giving orders, but as an equal participant, eager to learn and contribute. During one such meeting, Sarah presented a revolutionary design for a multi-level garden space that would be fully accessible to all employees and visitors. As she outlined the features, texture-rich pathways for the visually impaired, wheelchair-friendly planting areas, and quiet zones for those with sensory sensitivities, Zain found himself in awe of her vision. "This isn't just about accessibility," Sarah explained, her eyes shining with passion. "It's about creating a space where everyone feels valued, where diversity is celebrated rather than merely accommodated." As the meeting concluded, Zain lingered, watching Sarah interact with her team. She moved among them with easy confidence, her wheelchair seeming less like a limitation and more like simply another part of who she was. "You've put together an incredible team," Zain said as the room cleared. Sarah turned to him, a small smile playing at her lips. "They're amazing, aren't they? Each one of them brings a unique perspective that's crucial to this project." There was a moment of awkward silence, the weight of their complicated history hanging between them. Then Sarah spoke again, her voice softer. "You know, when you first told me about your company's involvement in my accident, I was angry. I wanted to walk away from all of this." Zain nodded, bracing himself for what might come next. "But then I realized," Sarah continued, "that this was an opportunity, a chance to create real, lasting change, and I couldn't walk away from that." "I'm glad you didn't," Zain said quietly. "You're changing more than just our buildings, Sarah. You're changing how we think, how we operate." Sarah held his gaze, her expression thoughtful. "Change isn't easy, Zain. There will be resistance, setbacks. Are you prepared for that?" "I am," he replied without hesitation. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm doing something that truly matters." As they parted ways, Zain felt a sense of hope that had been absent in the weeks since his revelation. The path forward was still uncertain, filled with challenges both professional and personal. But with Sarah's vision guiding them and his newfound commitment to meaningful change, Zain felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. Little did he know that the biggest challenges were yet to come, as the ripples of change they had set in motion would soon grow into waves, threatening to overturn the very foundations of the Al Rashid Empire. As the inclusive design initiative gained momentum, it began to attract attention both within and outside the Al Rashid Group. The project was transforming not just the physical spaces of the company's properties, but also the corporate culture itself. However, not everyone was enthusiastic about these changes. Nadia Al-Fayed, the long-standing head of public relations for Al Rashid Group, watched the developments with growing unease. She had spent years carefully cultivating the company's image as a powerhouse of luxury and exclusivity. The shift towards inclusivity and accessibility threatened to upend her carefully constructed narrative. One morning, Nadia requested a private meeting with Zain. As she entered his office, her tailored suit and perfectly coiffed hair a stark contrast to the more relaxed atmosphere that had begun to permeate the company, Zain sensed the coming confrontation. "Mr. Al-Rashid," Nadia began, her tone clipped and professional, "I'm concerned about the direction we're taking with this initiative." Zain leaned back in his chair, studying her carefully. "Go on." "Our brand has always been synonymous with luxury and aspiration," Nadia continued. "This focus on accessibility could dilute our image, not to mention the significant costs involved." "And what about the cost of excluding talented individuals because our spaces aren't accessible?" Zain countered. "Or the cost to our reputation if we're seen as out of touch with modern values?" Nadia's lips thinned. "With all due respect, sir, I've been managing our public image for over a decade. This sudden change, people are talking. They're wondering about your personal motivations." The implication was clear, and Zain felt a flash of anger. "My personal motivations? You mean Sarah? Your relationship with Ms. Martinez has not gone unnoticed," Nadia said carefully. "There are concerns that she might be influencing you unduly." Zain stood up, his voice low and intense. "Sarah Martinez is a highly qualified professional whose expertise we are lucky to have. Any personal feelings I may or may not have are irrelevant. This initiative is about doing what's right for our company and for the people we serve." Nadia seemed taken aback by his vehemence. "I see. Well, I hope you know what you're doing, Mr. Al-Rashid. Not everyone will be as understanding as I am." As she left, Zain sank back into his chair, the weight of the challenges ahead pressing down on him. He knew Nadia's concerns would be echoed by others in the company, particularly the old guard who resisted any change to the status quo. Later that day, as Zain observed one of Sarah's team meetings, he couldn't help but reflect on Nadia's words. Was he letting his personal feelings cloud his judgment? He watched as Sarah expertly guided her diverse team through a complex design problem, her intelligence and leadership shining through every interaction. No, he realized, his feelings for Sarah might have opened his eyes, but the changes they were implementing were objectively beneficial for the company and society at large. As the meeting concluded, Sarah noticed Zain's pensive expression. "Everything okay?" she asked as the room cleared. Zain hesitated, then decided on honesty. "There's some resistance to the changes we're making. Some people think I'm being influenced by personal feelings." Sarah's expression hardened slightly. "I see. And what do you think?" "I think they're missing the point," Zain replied firmly. "Yes, getting to know you has changed my perspective. But these changes are necessary and right, regardless of any personal feelings." Sarah nodded, her expression softening. "It's not going to be easy, you know. Changing an entire corporate culture never is." "I know," Zain said, "but I'm committed to seeing this through. We're doing something important here, Sarah." As they talked, Amira burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. "Zain, Sarah, you need to see this." She handed them a tablet open to a news article. The headline read, "Al Rashid Group's Inclusive Design Initiative, a new era of corporate responsibility?" The article praised the company's bold new direction, highlighting the potential impact on both the business world and society at large. It featured interviews with several members of Sarah's team, their personal stories adding depth and authenticity to the initiative. "This is incredible," Sarah breathed, her eyes scanning the article. "People are really paying attention." Zain felt a surge of pride and hope. "This is just the beginning," he said. "We're going to show the world that inclusivity and business success can go hand in hand." As they celebrated this small victory, none of them noticed Nadia watching from the doorway, her expression unreadable. The waves of change were growing stronger, and the coming storm would test them all in ways they couldn't yet imagine. That evening, as Zain prepared to leave the office, he found a mysterious envelope on his desk. Inside was a series of old photographs and documents dating back to the early days of the Al Rashid Group. As he examined them, his blood ran cold. The photos showed his father, young and ambitious, shaking hands with Sarah's parents. The accompanying documents detailed a partnership agreement, one that had apparently ended in betrayal and financial ruin for the Martinez family. Zain slumped in his chair, the weight of this new revelation pressing down on him. The connection between his family and Sarah's ran deeper than he had ever imagined, and the implications were staggering. As he stared at the evidence of past injustices, Zain realized that his journey of transformation was far from over. The true test of his commitment to change was just beginning. The revelation of the historical connection between the Al Rashid and Martinez families weighed heavily on Zain's mind. He spent the night poring over the documents, piecing together a story of ambition, betrayal, and long-buried secrets. The next morning, Zain arrived at the office earlier than usual, his mind racing with questions. He needed to understand the full extent of this connection before deciding how to proceed. As he stepped into the elevator, he found Sarah already there, her smile fading as she noticed his troubled expression. "Zain, what's wrong?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. He hesitated, then made a decision. "Sarah, there's something I need to show you. Can you come to my office?" Once in his office, Zain spread out the documents and photographs on his desk. Sarah's eyes widened as she recognized her parents in the old pictures. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Zain took a deep breath. "It appears our families have a history I wasn't aware of. Your parents were early partners in the Al Rashid Group." Sarah's hands trembled as she picked up one of the photographs. "My father never mentioned this. He always said he worked for a foundation. According to these documents, they were involved in the early development of our sustainable energy division," Zain explained. "But something went wrong. There was a dispute, and they were forced out." Sarah's eyes flashed with a mix of pain and anger. "Forced out? You mean your family betrayed them?" Zain felt the weight of his family's actions pressing down on him. I'm still trying to understand exactly what happened, but yes, it seems my father cut them out of the deal they had agreed upon. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah wheeled herself to the window, her back to Zane, her shoulders rigid with tension. "All these years," she said finally, her voice thick with emotion, "I wondered why my parents struggled so much after leaving Dubai, why my father never wanted to talk about his time here. Now it all makes sense." Zane moved to stand beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I had no idea about any of this. But I promise you I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." She turned to face him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "How, Zane? How do you make right years of struggle, of opportunities lost? This goes beyond just me or my accident. This is about my entire family." The weight of her words hit Zane like a physical blow. He realized that the path to redemption was far more complex than he had initially thought. "I don't know yet," he admitted, "but I'm committed to finding a way. Your family deserves justice, and I won't rest until we achieve that." Sarah studied him for a long moment, as if seeing him in a new light. "I believe you mean that," she said finally. "But this changes things, Zane. The work we're doing, the Inclusive Design Initiative, it's all tangled up in this history now." Zane nodded, understanding the implications. "Do you want to step back from the project?" "No," Sarah said, surprising him. "This work is too important, but we need to be transparent about everything, the past and the present. No more secrets." As they discussed how to move forward, neither of them noticed Nadia lingering outside the office, her ear pressed to the door. She slipped away, a calculating look in her eyes. Over the next few days, Zane threw himself into uncovering the full truth about the past. He interviewed longtime employees, dug through old archives, and even reached out to his father's former business associates. The picture that emerged was not flattering to the Al-Rashid family. It became clear that Sarah's parents had been instrumental in developing the initial concepts for the sustainable energy division. However, when the potential for massive profits became apparent, Zane's father had maneuvered them out, using legal loopholes and his superior resources to claim sole ownership of the ideas. The revelation shook Zane to his core. He had always seen his father as a tough but fair businessman. Now he was forced to confront the reality that his family's wealth was built, at least in part, on the exploitation of others. Meanwhile, Sarah grappled with her own emotional turmoil. The knowledge that her family's hardships were the result of deliberate actions rather than mere circumstance stirred up a complex mix of anger, grief, and a fierce determination to see justice done. As the week progressed, tensions in the office began to rise. Rumors of the past connection between the Al-Rashid and Martinez families began to circulate, fueled by whispers and speculation. Zain noticed sideways glances and hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when he entered a room. Amira, ever attuned to the pulse of the company, approached Zain with concern. "Brother, something's brewing. People are talking and not all of it is good. We need to get ahead of this." Zain agreed. He called for an all-hands meeting, determined to address the situation head-on. As employees filed into the large conference room, the air was thick with anticipation. Standing at the front of the room with Sarah beside him, Zain took a deep breath and began to speak. "I've called you all here because it's time for some hard truths. Our company has a history, one that isn't always something to be proud of. But today, we have a choice. We can either be defined by the mistakes of the past, or we can use them as a catalyst for real, meaningful change." As Zain laid out the truth about the company's past and his vision for its future, he could see a range of emotions playing across the faces in the room. Some looked shocked, others skeptical, and a few nodded in approval. "This won't be easy," Zain continued. "Change never is. But I believe that by acknowledging our past wrongs and actively working to right them, we can build a company that truly lives up to its potential, one that leads by example and creates value not just for shareholders, but for society as a whole." As the meeting concluded, Zain felt a mix of exhaustion and relief. He had taken the first step towards transparency, but he knew the real challenges were yet to come. The path ahead was uncertain, but with Sarah by his side and a renewed sense of purpose, Zain felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. What he didn't realize was that forces were already aligning against him, both within and outside the company. The stage was set for a battle that would test not just his leadership, but the very core of his beliefs and relationships. In the wake of Zain's revelatory all-hands meeting, the atmosphere at Al Rashid Group headquarters was electric with tension and uncertainty. While some employees embraced the new direction with enthusiasm, others viewed the changes with skepticism or outright hostility. Nadia Al-Fayed, seeing an opportunity to protect what she viewed as the company's true interests, began to quietly rally opposition among the board members and senior executives. Her carefully crafted whispers sowed seeds of doubt about Zain's leadership and his relationship with Sarah. One morning, as Zain arrived at his office, he found Amira waiting for him, her expression grave. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. "Some of the board members are calling for an emergency meeting. They're questioning your fitness to lead the company." Zain's jaw tightened. He had expected resistance, but not this quickly or forcefully. "Who's behind this?" "Officially, it's coming from Uncle Tariq," Amira replied, referring to their father's brother and longtime board member. "But I suspect Nadia's been pulling strings behind the scenes." As they discussed strategy, Sarah entered the office, her face pale. "Zain, have you seen the news?" She handed him her tablet, open to a business news site. The headline blared, "Al Rashid heir risks empire for romance? Insider sources reveal conflict of interest." The article, citing anonymous sources within the company, painted Zain's relationship with Sarah as the driving force behind the recent changes, suggesting that he was prioritizing personal interests over shareholder value. Zain's hands clenched around the tablet. "This is Nadia's work," he said, his voice low with anger. "She's trying to undermine everything we're doing." Sarah wheeled closer, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "We can't let them derail the initiative. There's too much at stake." Amira nodded in agreement. "We need to fight back, but smartly. If we can show concrete benefits from the inclusive design initiative, it might sway some of the doubters." Over the next few days, Zain, Sarah, and their allies worked tirelessly to prepare for the upcoming board meeting. They gathered data on the positive impact of their initiatives, from improved employee satisfaction to early interest from potential clients impressed by their commitment to accessibility. The night before the board meeting, Zain found himself working late in his office. A soft knock at the door revealed Sarah, holding 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you could use this," she said, offering him a cup. Zain accepted it gratefully, noting the shadows under Sarah's eyes that matched his own. "Thank you for everything, Sarah. I couldn't do this without you." Sarah's smile was tired but warm. "We're in this together, Zain. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that what we're doing matters. It's bigger than just us." Their eyes met, and for a moment the weight of their shared struggle and growing connection hung between them. Zain felt an overwhelming urge to close the distance, to take her hand, to express the feelings that had been growing despite the chaos around them. But before he could act, Sarah's phone buzzed with an urgent message. Her eyes widened as she read it. "Zain, you need to see this." She handed him the phone. It was an email from an anonymous source containing documents that appeared to be internal memos from the early days of the Al Rashid Group. The memos detailed not just the betrayal of Sarah's parents, but a pattern of unethical business practices that had helped build the company's fortune. "If this is true," Zain said, his voice hoarse, "it changes everything. We can't hide this." Sarah nodded, her expression resolute. "No, we can't. But Zain, if you reveal this at the board meeting, it could destroy the company," he finished. "I know, but it's the right thing to do." As dawn broke over Dubai, Zain steeled himself for the confrontation ahead. He entered the boardroom, Sarah and Amira flanking him, to face a group of stern-faced executives. Uncle Tariq sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. "Zain," Tariq began, his voice heavy with authority, "we've called this meeting to discuss the recent changes in company direction. There are concerns that your personal relationships are clouding your judgment and putting the company at risk." Zain took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the documents in his briefcase. "Before we begin," he said, "there's something you all need to see." As he distributed copies of the damning memos, a hush fell over the room. The board members' expressions ranged from shock to anger to fear as they realized the implications of what they were reading. "This is the true foundation of our company," Zain said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. We have a choice to make. We can continue to build on a legacy of deception and exploitation, or we can use our resources and influence to make real, positive change in the world. The room erupted into chaos. Accusations flew, alliances shifted, and for a moment, it seemed as though everything Zain and Sarah had worked for might crumble. But then a voice cut through the noise. It was Fatima al-Rashid, Zain's grandmother and the family matriarch. Though she rarely attended board meetings, her words still carried immense weight. "Enough," she said, her voice quiet but commanding. "Zain is right. It's time we faced our past and made amends. The path he and Sarah propose is not easy, but it is necessary. I, for one, support their vision for the future of this company." Her words seemed to shift the energy in the room. One by one, board members began to voice their support, some reluctantly, others with growing enthusiasm. As the meeting concluded, Zain felt a mix of exhaustion and cautious hope. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, both from within the company and from competitors eager to exploit any sign of weakness. But as he looked at Sarah, her eyes shining with a mixture of pride and determination, Zain knew that together they could face whatever came next. The storm clouds were still gathering, but for the first time he could see a glimmer of sunlight breaking through. The days following the tumultuous board meeting were a whirlwind of activity. News of the Al-Rashid Group's dramatic shift in direction and acknowledgement of past wrongdoings spread quickly through Dubai's business community and beyond. The company found itself at the center of a media storm, with opinions sharply divided on whether Zain's actions were admirable or reckless. Zain, Sarah and their team worked tirelessly to navigate the choppy waters. They launched a comprehensive plan to address the historical injustices revealed in the documents, starting with reaching out to families and individuals who had been wronged by the company in the past. One morning, as Zain reviewed the latest press reports in his office, Sarah entered, her face alight with excitement. "Zain, you won't believe this. We've just received an invitation to speak at the Global Inclusive Business Forum in New York. They want us to present our initiative as a case study in corporate transformation." Zain's eyes widened. "That's incredible, Sarah. This could be our chance to show the world that what we're doing isn't just talk. It's a viable model for the future of business." As they discussed the opportunity, Amira burst into the office, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "We have a situation. Nadia's resigned and she's taken a group of our top PR and marketing people with her. Word is they're joining our biggest competitor, Falcon Enterprises." Zain's jaw clenched. Falcon Enterprises had been nipping at Al-Rashid Group's heels for years, and this defection could give them a significant advantage. "We knew there would be fallout," he said, running a hand through his hair. "But this could be dangerous." Sarah reached out, her hand resting lightly on Zain's arm. "We'll face this like we've faced everything else, together. Maybe this is an opportunity to bring in fresh talent, people who truly believe in our new direction." Her touch and words seemed to steady Zain. He nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "You're right. Let's turn this challenge into an opportunity." Over the next few weeks, the team threw themselves into preparations for the New York Forum, while also working to stabilize the company in the wake of the defections. They recruited new team members who were passionate about inclusive design and corporate responsibility, infusing the company with fresh energy and ideas. As the date of the forum approached, Zain and Sarah found themselves working late into the night, fine-tuning their presentation. One evening, as they sat surrounded by notes and diagrams in the conference room, Sarah paused, looking at Zain with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she said softly, "when I first started working here, I never imagined any of this. You've changed so much, Zain. The company has changed." Zain met her gaze, feeling the weight of everything they'd been through. "You changed me, Sarah. You showed me what true strength and integrity look like. I hope I'm living up to that example." The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken emotions. Sarah wheeled closer, her hand finding Zain's. "You are," she said. "Every day you're choosing to do what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." For a moment they sat in silence, the warmth of their joined hands speaking volumes. Then, slowly, inevitably, they leaned towards each other. Their lips met in a kiss that was soft yet charged with months of built-up tension and growing affection. When they parted, both were slightly breathless. "Sarah, Zayn began, but she placed a finger gently on his lips. "We have a lot to figure out," she said, her eyes shining. "But right now, let's focus on New York, on showing the world what we've built here." Zayn nodded, feeling a mix of exhilaration and nervousness. Their personal relationship had just added another layer of complexity to an already challenging situation. But somehow having Sarah by his side made him feel that they could face anything. The day of their departure for New York arrived with a flurry of last-minute preparations. As they boarded the Al Rashid Group's private jet, Zayn couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. He had made this trip countless times before, but never with such high stakes, or with someone who meant so much to him personally. Sarah, sensing his tension, reached over and squeezed his hand. "We've got this," she said with a confidence that was contagious. "What we're doing matters, Zayn. It's going to make a difference." As the plane took off, soaring over the glittering skyline of Dubai, Zayn felt a surge of determination. They were embarking on more than just a business trip. They were setting out to change the very fabric of corporate culture, to prove that compassion and profit weren't mutually exclusive. But even as they flew towards New York and the promise of a new beginning, storm clouds were gathering on the horizon. Nadia and her team at Falcon Enterprises were planning their own media blitz, one designed to undermine everything Zayn and Sarah had worked for. And in the shadows, other forces were at work. People who saw the Al Rashid Group's new direction as a threat to the old way of doing business. As the lights of Dubai faded behind them, Zayn and Sarah faced forward towards an uncertain but hopeful future. They knew the real test was yet to come, but together they felt ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. The bright lights of New York City greeted Zayn and Sarah as they stepped off the plane, the energy of the bustling metropolis matching their own nervous excitement. They had barely settled into their hotel when Amira called with unsettling news from Dubai. "Falcon Enterprises has launched a massive PR campaign," she reported, her voice tense. "They're positioning themselves as the reliable traditional choice in contrast to our risky new direction. Some of our smaller investors are getting spooked." Zayn exchanged a worried glance with Sarah. "We knew this was coming," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "We'll stick to our plan. Our presentation at the forum is more important than ever now." The next morning, as they made their way to the convention center where the Global Inclusive Business Forum was being held, they were met with a flurry of reporters and cameras. News of the shakeup at Al Rashid Group had made waves even in New York. "Mr. Al Rashid, Ms. Martinez," a reporter called out. "How do you respond to claims that your new initiatives are putting shareholder value at risk?" Zayn was about to give a practiced response when Sarah spoke up, her voice clear and passionate. "Our initiatives aren't just about doing what's right, though that's crucial. They're about future-proofing our business. In a world that's increasingly aware of social responsibility, companies that don't adapt will be left behind." Her words seemed to resonate with the crowd, and Zayn felt a surge of pride. This was why they were here, to change minds and show a new way forward. Inside the forum, the atmosphere was electric with ideas and possibilities. Zayn and Sarah's presentation was scheduled for the afternoon, giving them time to network and gather support. They met with other business leaders, activists, and policymakers, all eager to hear about the Al Rashid Group's transformation. As the time for their presentation approached, Zayn felt a mix of nervousness and determination. He looked at Sarah, who gave him an encouraging nod. Together, they took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Zayn began, his voice steady, "we're here today to talk about more than just business strategies or profit margins. We're here to discuss the future, a future where companies can be powerful forces for positive change." Over the next hour, Zayn and Sarah laid out their vision. They were brutally honest about the Al Rashid Group's past mistakes, but also passionate about the steps they were taking to make amends and create a more inclusive, responsible company. Sarah's personal story and expertise in inclusive design added a powerful emotional dimension to their presentation. As they concluded, the room erupted in applause. Questions poured in, not just from the audience, but from viewers watching the live stream around the world. It was clear their message had struck a chord. Riding the wave of positive reception, Zayn and Sarah spent the next few days in a whirlwind of interviews, meetings, and negotiations. They secured partnerships with several socially responsible investment firms and even began preliminary talks about government contracts for inclusive urban development projects. But the true impact of their efforts became clear when they returned to Dubai. They were met at the airport by Amira, her face glowing with excitement. "You won't believe what's happened," she said as they drove back to the office. "Our stock price has actually gone up. Turns out, a lot of investors see our new direction as forward-thinking and sustainable, and we've had an influx of job applications from top talent around the world, people who want to be part of what we're doing." Zain felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They had taken a huge risk, but it was paying off in ways he hadn't dared to hope for. As they entered the Al Rashid Tower, employees greeted them with cheers and applause. The atmosphere in the building had transformed. There was an energy, a sense of purpose that hadn't been there before. In the following months, the changes they had set in motion began to bear fruit. The inclusive design initiative expanded beyond their own properties, with other companies seeking their expertise. They established a foundation to make amends to those wronged by the company in the past, including Sarah's family. One evening, as Zain and Sarah stood on the balcony of his office, looking out over the Dubai skyline, he turned to her with a smile. "You know," he said, taking her hand, "when I first met you in that elevator, I never imagined where it would lead. You've changed everything, Sarah. For me, for this company, for so many people." Sarah's eyes shimmered with emotion. "We did this together, Zain. All of us. And we're just getting started." As they leaned in for a kiss, the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, a fitting backdrop for the dawn of a new era, not just for the Al Rashid Group, but for the future of business itself. In the years that followed, Zain and Sarah's story became a case study in corporate transformation and inclusive leadership. The Al Rashid Group stood as a shining example of how businesses could be both profitable and socially responsible. And as for Zain and Sarah themselves, they continued to face challenges, both personal and professional, but they faced them together, their bond strengthened by shared purpose and mutual respect. They had not only changed a company, they had changed each other, and in doing so had begun to change the world. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope that Zain and Sarah's journey has touched your hearts and inspired you. This tale of transformation, love, and corporate responsibility is just one of many captivating stories we have to offer. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally compelling narratives. You can find it by clicking the link to your left. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give the video a thumbs up. Every day we bring you unique stories that explore the complexities of life and business. Don't miss our upcoming content. We can't wait to read your thoughts in the comments section.